This is the Fantasy Ladder Podcast, episode 13. My name is Steve at Fantasy Ladder. This podcast is brought to you by the IDP Guys Network from idpguys.org. So, welcome back, my fantasy football friends and family. Let's climb the ladder of fantasy football together. So, we are going to continue our fan base series. If you're new here, welcome to the show. This is what we are in the middle of, just going through a lot of the teams before the start of the season, recapping their offseason, and then an outlook to the 2022 season. So for this series, I'm bringing you some of my favorites from the fantasy football community to discuss their favorite teams. Doing this just to add a little bit more depth, a little bit more heart to the discussion, because I may not be as plugged in to these teams as my own favorite team, which of course is the Eagles. But today, got a really special treat for you. We're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm going to bring on my guests one by one. Here we go. First guest here is Seth Woolcock at between_Seth FF. He is the founder of IBT Media. And here at the Fantasy Ladder Podcast, we are big fans of IBT Media and all that they do. So Seth, welcome on to the show. How you doing? And how long have you been a Steelers fan?
Steve, I appreciate you having me on, man. We got together a couple months ago in real life. It was an
That's
absolute
right.
pleasure mixing it up with you. I'm having a blast, man. We get to talk a little Pittsburgh Steelers here on a Tuesday evening. I've been a Steelers fan since about 2004, so that pretty much does it for me. At that point, I think I was only 6 years old. So from the very beginning for me, very beginning.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's kind of how it goes sometimes. Some teams are very territorial to where you live, right? So being like growing up about an hour outside of Philadelphia, it's like there's a lot of Steelers fans for sure, but it's
Mhm.
very Eagles, and so in that area, it's like you are a fan of the Eagles and Phillies and everything else. But the majority of the state is Steelers fans, and some in West Virginia, a little Ohio too. So just kind of interesting. A really passionate, really big fan base. But yeah, so just tell us a little bit about IBT Media and what's going on over there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate being here with you tonight, Steve. If you're interested in feel good lifestyle advice merged with fantasy football, fantasy golf, and fantasy NASCAR analysis, that's what we do over at IBT Media. We like people to, not only win fantasy football championships and cash from their betting slips or their DFS lineups, but we also want to just have them, help them live that life that they deserve to be living. So that's kind of what we do over there at IBT Media. We talk a lot about mental health. We talk a lot about self-help, just a lot of stuff that's trying to, help people, improve their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and I'll say I have read a lot of the articles that have been put out by I'll just say the fantastic staff that you have over there. I've always have come away from the articles with not only good knowledge about the contest coming up, whether it was MMA or football or
Mhm.
whatever it happened to be, but also just a lot to just kind of chew on upstairs. So a lot of really great stuff from there. So big fan of the site, big fan of you. I'm honored that you're on the show here today, buddy.
Appreciate that so much, man. I'm ready to go.
Perfect, perfect. And our next guest, we have Michael Ciccoli at Michael_Ciccoli. He is a writer and a content creator for the IDP guys, and the writer of the newsletter, which is a fantastic thing. So please subscribe to that. Michael, how you doing? And how long have you been a Steelers fan?
Oh, I am great. I can't say I'm much better than Seth about how excited I am to be on this show. I've been looking forward to this ever since you brought it up to me, just because I love complaining about my Steelers. But I've been a fan since the Cardinals Super Bowl in '09. I was 8 years old. I wasn't all that. I was in New York. My dad is a Giants fan who did nothing but rip apart Eli Manning from start to finish, and rightfully so in my eyes. So it's kind of hard to root for that. The Jets were rolling out Mark Sanchez, so that was tough to root for. And I got to see that San Antonio Holmes catch. I got to see the James Harrison moments, the Troy Polamalu moments, and that was an easy team to root for. So that's how I rooted for the Steelers.
Perfect, perfect. That's awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show, and yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, especially on the Steelers draft here in just a little while. So, yeah, I appreciate you being on.
Of course, man. Of course.
And we have JC at JCJ Dynasty. He is a writer at DFF_Dynasty. That's Dynasty Football Factory. JC, how you doing? And how long have you been a Steelers fan?
Good, Steve. Thank you a lot for having me on the show. I've been a Steelers fan since birth. I was born into it. Back when the Super Bowl was played in January, my dad was it was his 9th birthday, and he made a bet with his aunt, who gave him $10 on his birthday. And if the Steelers won, he got 20, and if the Cowboys won, he got 0. The Steelers ended up pulling out a 35-31 win in that Super Bowl. So ever since, it's been either I'm a Steelers fan or I don't have a roof over my head. So
there you go. Well, I think you made a wise choice there. But yeah, so being an Eagles fan, any Cowboys loss is a win for us. So yeah, so that's great. I appreciate you being on the show. And just the Steelers fan base in general is a very special one to me. I, after all, did marry a Steelers fan. So I know a pretty good deal about what the life of a Steelers fan is like. I would say it's been fairly privileged over the years being a suffering Philadelphia fan, but it is interesting that there is always a bit of optimism or pessimism with the team you root for. So I'm very excited to have you guys all on and hear your perspectives. So just going to start this show with a summary of the 2021 season and how they reached this point of the offseason. So they ended the 2021 season with a 9-7-1 record, just barely made it into the playoffs with an unfortunate early exit to Kansas City. TJ Watt sets the new NFL sack record, and Big Ben retires, the end of a legendary era. So, guys, how do we feel about a Ben Roethlisberger-less Steelers team? Do you guys hold any sentimental value with him, or are you just ready for the next chapter? We'll start with you, Seth.
I mean, it's going to be different. Any time that you lose a franchise quarterback, let alone a 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback, it's going to be different. Obviously, I have strong ties to Big Ben. I actually, the first Steelers game I got to go to as a kid was his second start ever back in Heinz Field. So it's going to be different. Heinz Field, no longer Heinz Field as well. So big changes coming to Steelers Nation this year. I'm excited for what the future brings, but this Big Ben era will always hold a special place in my heart. It's really what led me to where I am today.
Gotcha. Perfect. How about you, Mike?
It's got to be along the same. I mean, anytime you have a gold jacket level quarterback for 2 decades, it's something that I feel like we probably did take for granted. But at the same time, this is a roster, a team that has not won a playoff game since 2016, and it feels it. So it feels like it's overdue a little bit. And nothing against Ben, love Ben, and it's a little bit scary because we saw what that could look like in that Mason Rudolph year, but the change had to happen. He was done, and now it's a franchise that just got to move forward. And we're going to talk about what that means in a little bit.
Gotcha. Yeah, so JC, the last episode I did, or a couple episodes ago, what was the Falcons? So they're in a similar situation. They're saying goodbye to longtime quarterback Matt Ryan. The one guest I had said, yeah, he's going to miss Matt Ryan, but he thinks it is like the best direction for the team. The other guest was like, I'm cold. I'm just ready for him to be out of town. So how are you feeling about Ben Roethlisberger being gone? Any mixed emotions there or anything different from these guys?
Yeah, mixed emotions, obviously. You grew up your entire life and you have that consistency at the quarterback position. There's very few teams across the NFL that have had the privilege of having just the one quarterback. Off the top of my head, it's Tom Brady, Peyton Manning for a long time with the Colts, and that's about it. So, I mean, it was a special thing to have him for 20 years. It's kind of cool not to have a quarterback that's just got cement bricks on his feet and can't move around in the pocket anymore. So that should hopefully open things up for Matt Canada and this offense with the read option that he wants to try to implement that can maybe help out our young offensive line. And it's also nice that I have to pay a franchise quarterback $40 million a year, and we could use that for other positions on the team that we were severely lacking in. So we're going to get into that a little further in the show. But it was nice to see him be sent off in a way. He beats the Browns in his last game. He's the daddy of the Cleveland Browns. So it was good for him to end it in a way that we all remember Big Ben doing his entire career.
Yeah, I think that there was that late season win against the Ravens as well. That was a real went deep into overtime, and so despite the early exit, I mean, it seemed like, well, maybe the Steelers weren't going to be a playoff team. I think that it's as good of a send off for him in his career as you could have hoped for with the skill level that he was able to demonstrate. But that stability really goes a long way, even just in division. You think about all the quarterbacks that just the Browns have had. I think over that time, it might have been, I don't even know, 14, 15 different starting quarterbacks just in Ben Roethlisberger's tenure. So it's pretty impressive. But yeah, it seems like there's a pretty common thought about his time away now. So it's going to now transition into the free agency moves that the Steelers had made. Going to start with the losses, okay? So they did not retain wide receivers Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, or Ray McLeod, who was more of a special teams contributor, as well as guard Try Turner and quarterback Joshua Dobbs. Additions, they brought in quarterback Mitchell Trubisky, linebacker Miles Jack, safety DeMonte Casey. Then they added some help on the offensive line with the center Mason Cole and guard James Daniels, and they added a wide receiver Gunnar Olszewski. I have this little thing where, like, anytime I mispronounce a player's name, I have to add a quarter to a jar. So there's mine for the show. But he basically will take over that Ray McLeod role, is what I'm thinking, as a special teams and returner type. Did I miss anything from what you guys were able to gather? Or do we even care about the ones that we actually mentioned here? Well, what are your thoughts on the moves overall? We'll start with you, Mike, this time.
It's okay, and it's really the draft moves that I'm excited for, and a bit of what JC said before about freeing up this amount of cap space. The Steelers will be, for the next couple of years with Kenny Pickett at the helm, will be buyers in free agency. Like this was a taste of what's going to come. We get to sign James Daniels, we get to bring in Mason Cole. Years past, that never happened. It was bargain bins. Our big news of the offseason was restructuring deals, and Kevin Colbert's genius at that. But now we get to make these moves. I like the James Daniels signing. They brought in Mason Cole, who should be better. I'm not a big fan, but he should be better. And improving that offensive line is a really big. When you invest a first-round pick in Najee Harris, you need to be able to run the ball more effectively than they were last year.
Yeah, definitely. So how about you, JC? You excited for these moves? Underwhelmed? Was there anyone else you were hoping for?
I'm excited for Miles Jack to come in. He's played linebacker at an extremely high level in the NFL during his career with the Jaguars, and he hasn't really gotten that shine because he plays down in Jacksonville. Devin Bush, he's underperformed since the ACL, and it would be good to get Miles Jack in there, a pro's pro, to maybe help him get his mojo back a little bit at the linebacker position, because it is a make or break year with Devin Bush. We didn't pick up his options, so it's either Devin Bush, you start playing like the guy we traded up for, or you're not going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler for much longer. I'm excited about DeMonte KZ. I think he's immediately a better safety than Terrell Edmunds is. I think Terrell Edmunds can't tackle. I mean, he was a reach when we took him in the first round 4 or 5 years ago, and he really hasn't paid dividends. I wish he was his brother Tremaine. He's not. And I like Levi Wallace, the corner that we got from the Bills, number 39 over there. He plays a good press corner, played opposite Tre'Davious White. He reminds me a little bit of the Steven Nelson corner that we brought in from Kansas City those few years ago, and now he's one of your Philadelphia Eagles over there in the Keystone State. So I'm excited about bringing those guys in. Stinks to lose Juju. We'll always have the Vontaze Burfict block. And James Washington, I always liked James Washington. I felt like he never really got enough playing time. He never really gelled with Ben Roethlisberger, but it just never really materialized. So, I'm wishing him all the best going forward in Dallas, but it is what it is.
Gotcha. How about you, Seth? Any favorite additions or anyone you were hoping for instead of the guys that were added?
I mean, this is a better free agent class than we've kind of pulled in the last couple of years, and I think Michael touched on it very well. This is what happens when you can free up some cap space from a veteran quarterback. Obviously, we still have a lot of money tied up in T.J. Watt and Minka, and rightfully so. Obviously, those are the guys we need to build around here on this young Steelers team. Mason Cole, I think, is a little bit overrated coming to this. He's always kind of been a spot starter. He had that one really solid 2018 season with the Cardinals, and then ever since then has kind of never really lived up to that. James Daniel, though, that was a huge signing. I was actually really surprised we were even in the market for him. But still, with the offensive tackles we have right now, this is a bottom 5 offensive line in the league still. It's improved a little bit, but it's still one of the worst lines. Like everyone was kind of saying too, I will miss the wide receivers. Juju, I wish we could have got something done, especially because it doesn't seem like we're even going to pay Deontay Johnson in a year from now. So I wish we could have got something done. I understand the decision, though. And James Washington, I mean, just an underrated receiver. I was really hoping he would come back, fill that wide receiver 3 role for us. I mean, he's a walking 3 touchdowns every season, a couple hundred yards, and he's reliable in the deep ball. And I think we're going to miss that as long as Chase Claypool does not show a lot of improvement in the deep ball game. I think we're going to miss that a little bit. But, overall, I'm satisfied. Myles Jack, 2 years, $16 million from Myles Jack. That's absolute bargain stealing right there. So I'm all right with it overall. I think the losses plus the gains there kind of make it almost like a net neutral, in my opinion.
Yeah, to me, it always seems like the Steelers just have a way of getting highly drafted players on the cheap. So in this case, like Mitch Trubisky, even though he hasn't played like a top 5 draft pick quarterback, they still get him very cheap. They get Myles Jack, who I believe was a top 10 pick, or at least a first rounder in the draft that he was taken on the cheap. So they just have this way, at least it's my perception, that they're able to bring in players who are highly sought after at one point, and it just seems like a smart move to make. So yeah, I guess my question now, as we dive into their draft classes, where does the Trubisky and Pickett competition begin, right? So we'll jump into the draft class. In the first round, 20th overall, they did select quarterback Kenny Pickett. So the Pittsburgh Panther stays in Pittsburgh. In the second round, 52nd overall, they selected wide receiver George Pickens, adding to the tradition of taking second-round receivers, Claypool, Juju, James Washington. Just kind of interesting. They seem to hit these guys pretty often and pretty well. Round 3, defensive end, DeMarvin Leal. And then round 4, another wide receiver, Calvin Austin, very intriguing talent out of Memphis. I am particularly, I love these guys from Memphis who are just got the blazing speed. Very intrigued by him. Followed by depth adds with a tight end fullback hybrid player, a linebacker, and then just a depth quarterback. So it's an interesting question going into this draft. With all the mock drafts, all the swell of mock drafts out there, it seemed like the quarterbacks could have gone way early, as early as 6. And then I was thinking, well, I don't know if these quarterbacks are even going to make it to the Steelers at 20 overall, if that's what they were looking for. But they certainly did that. They took the first quarterback taken at 20th overall. Now, Michael, you sent us a little clip of yourself from a live stream event. It was the IDP guys and Club FF. It was Club Fantasy live stream on the NFL draft, and your live reaction to the Pickett pick was you grabbed your face and we're not happy. So take me through that moment. What was going on, and what's your take on the Kenny Pickett take or selection?
Yeah, and listen, I get the pick. All right, this is a guy that a lot of people had in the top 10. The guy that fills a huge need. Regardless of what you think about Mitch, the odds that he is the long-term starter are incredibly low. I don't think Kenny Pickett's going to be the answer, which means I think we're just punting this question 3-4 years down the line. I didn't like him out of Pittsburgh. I didn't think his arm strength was nearly good enough. I'm not sure what the upside is. The mobility is middling. You're not going to confuse him with Lamar Jackson. You're certainly not going to confuse him with Tom Brady, but he was not the most mobile guy in this class. He doesn't have the best arm in this class. Everyone talks about the hand size in the process. I do think it's an issue. Obviously, he's still going to be in Pittsburgh. He's used to the weather conditions, but the NFL ball is bigger than the college ball. He had fumble problems in college too. He didn't really do anything until his 5th year. There's just so many red flags to invest a first-round pick in with Kenny Pickett. I liked a lot of the rest of the draft class. I'll quickly touch on that. But I do like George Pickens. I like him a lot. He's a natural insurance policy for Claypool, should that not work out for whatever reason Claypool wants to do. DeMarvin Leal's an interesting pick, a little bit undersized to kind of fill the defensive tackle hole that they had in the middle, but they kind of filled out Larry Ogunjobi last week. So I like that signing to kind of counter what they expect from a rookie. It ultimately comes down to what pick it's going to be, and I just wasn't a big fan of the pick.
Gotcha. Now, Seth, were you like fist bumping, like you're excited?
I saw that
right?
too.
So just as a counterpoint, how did you feel about that pick?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny actually because there's a video of me. I never posted it anywhere, but we were at a live draft party in Vegas out for the draft, and my girlfriend took it from behind me reacting to the pick. I was excited, and Michael, I get the red flags because there are absolutely red flags here. But were there not with Joe Burrow a couple seasons ago too? Transfers from Ohio State. Go ahead, Michael. I know you're.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. I didn't mean to slow your roll, Seth, because I want to be excited about this for a rookie quarterback. It's the first real promise since then. My point with Burrow, because everyone brings it up because he also had tiny hands, is that Burrow put up one of the best college seasons we have ever seen from a quarterback. That's all. Keep going.
No, absolutely. Burrow did have Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson at his disposal as well. Arguably, I think Kenny Pickett had one elite wide receiver at Pitt. He's now gone to USC. RIP to him. But, first of all, let's just look at the story for this. We're all, fantasy football guys, but I'm also a journalist at the end of the day too. And, I love the story of it. Family played at all these smaller state schools here in Pennsylvania, Kutztown. I think one was at Bloom, maybe a Ship. Sister plays soccer here now as well. So come from Jersey like he did, winning the state championship out there, coming here to Pitt. It was a great story. And now that he gets to stay in Pittsburgh, I mean, you could not write a better tale than this one here for Kenny Pickett. But just looking at the football side, the only thing that concerns me about him is his sacks. He took 29 sacks last year. That was really high for most of these good elite starting quarterbacks in college football. We know the offensive line is shaky. However, top 6 in passing yards, a 67.2 completion percentage for him, 42 touchdowns on the year. And we're talking about Pitt, guys. This is Pitt, which historically they're not a Penn State. They're not some of these other powerhouse schools. It's Pitt. So I think all things considered, he's saying all the right things. He's got the charisma. I think he's going to get it done here, guys. I really do. I mean, he reminds me a lot about, we were talking the same stuff about Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, to a more extent with Herbert coming out 2 years ago. He reminds me of them a lot, and he's more mobile than I think Mike was giving credit for, too. You guys remember that fake slide?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a move that, just being a dad now, I'm like, I'm just going to hurt myself just thinking about trying to pull that off. Like, I need my hamstrings. I got to mow the lawn. I can't be doing that stuff. But, so I found that to be very impressive. But how about you, JC? Did you have a favorite draft pick? And what's your general thoughts on Pickett?
Well, my favorite draft pick is George Pickens. We're talking about a guy that, if he doesn't tear his ACL in spring ball, he's probably a top 20 pick in the NFL draft with how many receivers went off the board. He's a guy that broke out as a true freshman in the SEC, 18 years old, 6'3", 200 pounds, relative athletic score of 9.34 from the University of Georgia. Who had a 9.33 from the University of Georgia, also 6'3", also 200 pounds, also played in the AFC North, AJ Green. I don't know. It just seems like he is that guy. Like, he's an alpha. He wears the ski mask. He's NFL young boy. He's got that fire. He's got that dog, He's got kind of an attitude problem, but I like it. I think it brings, an edge to the game. And if you're going to be an alpha receiver, you have to play with some kind of edge, and he plays with the physicalness. And he's light on his feet, too. So when the Chiefs – I was listening to the draft. So the first round, the Chiefs and the Steelers were the teams that he really had a lot of visits with. So it was the 30th pick, and the Chiefs Roger Goodell walks up to the podium and he goes, "The Chiefs select George," and my heart sank because I was like, "No, like they're gonna take George Pickens."
Yeah.
They took Karlaftis. I was like, "Oh, we still got a chance to take George." So we get him at 52. I'm ecstatic because the Patriots take Tyquan Thornton. They're notoriously terrible at taking skill players. So I was like, great. They passed on George Pickens. We got a chance to get him. We take him. We get him. I'm doing mental gymnastics now that we actually took George Pickens at 20 and Kenny Pickett was our second-round pick at 52. That's how I'm going to have to justify it in my head because that's the way that I think it's going to play out. I was of the opinion that we should go after Mitch Trubisky around October, November, because I thought he did a lot of things well that we needed for the Matt Canada offense to actually have a chance to work. He's mobile. He's run a read option before. He's got great weapons in the Steelers offense, now adding George Pickens and Calvin Austin. So I think he has a chance. People are kind of sleeping on him because they had a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth from when he was with the Bears. He's with a way better offense, way better franchise, way more stability. I think we're going to be surprised by what Mitch Trubisky does with the Steelers offense, and it may be a while for Kenny Pickett to step on the field. He's 24 years old before he even takes a snap in the NFL. That worries me that he's a finished product. Kenny Pickett is what Kenny Pickett is. He's not really going to develop anymore. You don't all of a sudden become 26 years old and you take this step as a quarterback in the NFL that you aren't already. So by the time his rookie contract's up, he's 29 years old? What are we going to do with the 29-year-old quarterback that probably really hasn't developed that much? Because I don't think he's going to beat out Mitch Trubisky week one, especially with the schedule that the Steelers are facing. We got the Browns, we got the Bengals, we got the Patriots in there, I believe. We're talking about 3 really good teams in the first month. It's throwing your rookie quarterback in the deep, deep water facing those teams. So I think Trubisky's going to play, and he's going to play often. I'm excited about Calvin Austin. Sauce Gardner, when he was asked in the rookie process at the Combine, who was your most difficult cover in college? Unprompted, he said Calvin Austin.
Wow.
Now, is that because Sauce Gardner's a lanky guy, he's taller, and Calvin Austin's a little more shifty, a little more quick, a little more compact? Probably, yeah. It's probably hard to get your hands on Calvin Austin being 5'8". But I think he's going to be the main kick returner, punt returner, and he's got a chance when Deontay Johnson walks next year that he's got that same kind of quick twitch, make you miss in a phone booth kind of athleticism that could take over for Deontay Johnson. And the Steelers will just go ahead and take another receiver in the second round, and we'll re-up like we always do with Juju and James Washington and George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. This is what we do. We take day 2 receivers, and we turn them into gold for the most part. So I'm excited. I'm excited about the guys that they took. You know, I'm not pleased with Kenny Pickett, but he's our guy now, and we got to hope for the best.
Gotcha. So, Mike and JC, you guys do recognize that the Steelers are probably going to target a quarterback. If not Pickett, who would have you preferred there with the class coming in?
I had Malik Willis as my QB1. I would have preferred several names, obviously, but I was a big Matt Corral guy. I was a big Sam Howell guy. Obviously, Sam Howell slipping into day 3 means that I probably had something wrong with my process. I'll give the NFL. I don't give the NFL evaluators much credit either, but day 3 means I probably had something wrong. But I did like Mike Corral a lot. I thought he kept on progressing throughout college. He has the arm strength I want from somebody. You saw him take his interceptions down. And then Carolina kind of made their bet a little bit with Baker and Sam Darnold. And I don't know how much of a chance Matt Corral will get. But I would have preferred a lot of other names just because I'm chasing for upside. And that's my big problem with Pickett. I don't know how high that ceiling is.
Interesting. Okay. How about you, JC? Who is your quarterback 1 in this class?
I would have liked to see him take Malik Willis.
Okay.
When the report came out at the Senior Bowl that Mike Tomlin was big on Malik Willis, it just seemed like it was smoke and mirrors, that they weren't actually in on Malik Willis, and they wanted to push everybody away from Kenny Pickett, which turns out they didn't have to do because nobody took a quarterback for like another 50 picks. Malik Willis, there's a play where he's playing Virginia Tech, and he's rolled out to the right, and he's about to get sacked, and he spins out of the sack, and he throws this dot to the 3-yard line. And I just can't think of any more than, on one hand, how many quarterbacks in the NFL can make that throw. He's got the athleticism. He's got the ability to run with the ball. Scrambling wise, I think he would have been a lot of fun. I'm not saying he would be Cordell Stewart for the Steelers. I think he's probably a better thrower of the ball than Cordell Stewart. The accuracy would have been an issue, but that's also the perfect guy that we could let sit behind Mitch Trubisky. And if Mitch is the guy, then that's great. But if he ends up not being the guy, now we have a guy that we've been able to develop for a year or two in the system with the coaching staff. He's now comfortable, and we could get rolling in 2023, 2024. That would have been the guy that I would have liked to see them take.
I'll quickly throw in that. I'll quickly jump in and just say I would have been totally happy with an offensive lineman as well.
Yeah,
I was not like Seth. I was not totally sold with every move they made on the line. I don't know why they paid Chucks as much as they did to play tackle. But I would have welcomed anything there, and then bulk up with a very stout, very strong 2023 class. Especially at the quarterback position compared to this year that we unanimously decided, regardless of what you thought about Pickett, or Malik Willis, who a lot of people had as QB1, nobody was thrilled about this class. All these guys would be 2, 3, 4 in the next year's group. So I would have liked to see it play out, but it played out a different way.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I continued to be shocked at Sam Howell's fall. I thought he could have easily been day 2, and then day 3 keeps going. Then top of the 5th round, Washington gets him. I'm like, that to me looks like a potential steal of the draft, but I don't know. It is fascinating. It's like I'm not in the rooms with the quarterbacks. I'm not, looking at all the tape and whatever. But it's just a fascinating thing. So I appreciate your answers though, and it was funny because Tomlin had these he had this face at Willis's pro day, like it was like Christmas morning. I'm like, without a doubt, they're gonna get Willis, but I don't know. It's just interesting. It's very fascinating. All right. Did any undrafted free agent signings step out to you, or step out to you guys? Sometimes they do for me. Sometimes they don't. With my Eagles, I was very excited that they were able to sign Carson Strong. It's kind of surprised he didn't get drafted. And Kennedy Brooks. So it's every now and then you get some players that kind of excite you that go undrafted. Anyone stick out to you guys for the Steelers?
The thing about the Steelers that I love is they always go after like 1 or 2 local Western PA guys, whether, they take some shot from the guys from Lum, IUP, a lot of slippery get over there sometime. The only name that kind of stuck out to me, and again, it might just be because he's a local guy, is Jake Dixon, offensive tackle from Duquesne. Big guy, and right now, I mean, we've already kind of addressed Michael and I have kind of traded shots here at the Steelers' offensive tackle. So, it might be a depth piece for right now if he can make the roster. But I like the local kid aspect, and I like what the body of work coming from Duquesne, which is kind of an underrated college football school in my opinion as well.
Gotcha. I like that.
I'll throw out one other name. Sorry, someone else want to jump in or no?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll throw out another name. Duke's Mateo Durant, the running back out of Duke. He had 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns at Duke. They gave him the largest undrafted rookie free agent contract in franchise history, $15,000 signing bonus as well, for a backfield that has no locked-in backup. I know a lot of the beat reporters, especially the ones I follow at The Athletic, love those guys, Ed Boucher and Mark Caboli. They are touting that the Steelers are not giving up on Benny Snell. And then this week we hear they're in the market for a veteran running back. Latavius Murray's being floated around. All I'm saying is that they gave Durant a lot of money. He has an opportunity to be the RB2 for this team. Oh my goodness, I'm even blanking on his name. Anthony McFarland seems like a total afterthought despite his connections to Matt Canada. There is no backup running back for what should be one of the most run-heavy teams in football. For fantasy, if we're taking it on the fantasy side of it, that's a very valuable role. He won't do anything while Najee's healthy, but that's a primo role that does not have an answer right now. And Mateo Durant's an interesting name to keep an eye on for Dynasty, for sure.
I like that.
Also, kind of talking about that backfield a little bit, building off Michael there. Connor Hayward, he wasn't an undrafted free agent, but he's coming from Michigan State, kind of a versatile, do-it-all type of player. Played some fullback, tight end, even a little halfback as well. I like his versatility. Kind of reminds me of a couple of the backs we've had it in years past. Oh man, I can't even forget. Yeah, who did we have a couple?
Jalen Samuels.
Yes, he reminds
But-
me exactly
Yeah.
of Jalen Samuels.
He's a more
I was
athletic
in on the
Jalen
Jalen
Samuels.
Samuels
Yeah.
hype so bad, like every single season. So maybe I'm getting a little caught up in that once again. But I think Connor Hayward might be the better version of Jalen Samuels, possibly.
How about you, JC? Who are you going to talk on?
Mateo Durant was going to be the guy that I was going to talk about.
Perfect.
I think David Johnson would be a really interesting guy to bring in as a backup for Najee Harris. He had a tryout with the Saints. It didn't work out well. But he's a guy that he has experience being that dual threat in the backfield, and he's good in pass protection, which we could probably definitely use. Anthony McFarland, I remember having James Conner a couple years ago in fantasy, and it was infuriating to have Anthony McFarland, this guy that had this connection to Matt Canada, come in, and he looked good when they gave him the ball. He did a good job. Jalen Samuels is another guy that he was a good back in terms of third down production. But we do need the guy that could spell Najee Harris. We had Kalen Ballage last year. He didn't really inspire much confidence. We've done the Benny Snell experiment. He's not really producing. So we do need the guy. I'm intrigued by Mateo Durant. He's got good size too. He's about 6'1", 220. So he's not necessarily Najee Harris size, but he's close to it. So he's a guy that could punish you between the tackles, which would be exciting.
If there was a veteran
That's great.
free agent out there, guys, is there one name that comes to mind that you hope they're targeting for this backfield? We just heard Najee come out a couple days ago and say that he doesn't want to be, or he's not going to be on the field for some of these downs, sometimes alluding to third down. The only name that came to mind for me was Devonta Freeman. Had a very good last season for the Ravens. I think he has some 3-down skill set left in him as well. So that was kind of the name for me that I was hoping they would grab. I didn't know if anyone else had any other veteran names out there.
I was hoping they were going to go after Darrell Williams before he signed with Arizona. I thought that would have been a really good fill and a guy that produced for the Chiefs last year, especially when they needed him. But obviously that didn't come to pass. I was hoping they would even take another shot at another Chiefs guy, Jerick McKinnon, who also looked amazing during the playoffs. I was shocked that the Chiefs
ran all over us.
Bring him back. Yeah. We know better than anyone. So none of that happened. So my last ditch hope is Latavius Murray. But then at this point, I might as well just pray Benny Snell actually lost weight and looks faster somehow, because he has not looked fast even from his days in Kentucky.
Gotcha. All right, so now we're going to look ahead to this current season. We talked through the signings and the draft class. Now we're going to get into the schedule a little bit. After reviewing the schedule, what do you think are realistic expectations in terms of wins and losses? To me, it's a very interesting division because you got Lamar Jackson back. When I did my show covering the Ravens, Bob Miller of Dynasty Pros, he remains very confident in his Ravens. As much as he thinks that they're just going to steamroll the division and make a deep playoff run. What do you guys think? After reviewing the schedule, do you think winning the division is a possibility with Lamar Jackson being back, with the Browns potentially being upgraded with Watson? We'll see how that goes. And then the Bengals, of course, who somehow were conference champions last year, still blows me away. It was an incredible season for them, but I never, in my wildest dreams, would have thought that's how far that they would have gone. So what do you guys think? Looking at 9-7 again, or like a 9-8 year? Do you think 10 wins? Where are you guys at? How about you, Seth?
I mean, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. I think there's a possibility that that's going to continue. Right now, the odds makers do not think so. So right now, if you're listening to this podcast, go over there on your DraftKings Sportsbook app or whatever Sportsbook app you're using. It's plus money right now that the Steelers are above 500. So I'm going to take that. I think it's probably going to be about a 9-7 year, 9-8 now with the extra game. So I think 9-8 is probably realistic. I look at this schedule, though, and I say there's only 2 games that I can say for sure we should win, and that's Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, I think we'll still get some good home crowds. We should win some of these divisional games. But right now, I don't know if playoffs are in the cards. If anything, maybe we squeak in as a 6 or 7 seed once again here. But the beginning schedule here, just absolutely brutal, guys. And, the 2 teams that I think a lot of people would say, well, Seth, don't you think they have a chance against, the likes of the Jets, the likes of the Dolphins? I don't know. The Jets are going to be frisky this year, and I'm not just talking about Zach Wilson's sex life. And the Dolphins, we never know, guys. So, I'm a little concerned. I think it could be a bumpy road, which is I see Kenny Pickett, possibly coming in around week 9 after that bye.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't see a world they have a winning season, let alone playoffs. I mean, I think I guess I see the world. They haven't had a losing season since 2003. This roster is just not good. It's time for us to face that Minka's a good player. Minka's a great player. TJ Watt's unbelievable. That defense has a lot of holes besides it. Obviously Hayward's amazing, but that still a lot of questions about the health of their run defense, which is one of the worst in the league last year. Secondary. Levi Wallace, I like that signing as well, but that's it. And he's replacing Joe Hayden, who still played fairly well last year. Linebackers. Miles Jack's nice. Devin Bush is still a huge question mark. Meanwhile, the AFC gets tremendously stronger. AFC West alone has 4 teams that should beat the Steelers after a playoff team. The AFC North is going to rattle them silly. I just don't see where the route is for the Steelers because I don't think this is going to be a top half offense. I think it'll be a top round number 8 defense or so. I just don't think it's going to get it done. And if I would bet the under. I think they're an 8-9 team at best. Which I honestly, me betting against the Steelers, it feels like it's something that's just made to be. So I'll probably do that at the conclusion of this show. I might even do it now.
There you go.
Michael, I think you hit it, man, but I will say, I think it's just a different way we're going to have to win nowadays. I think we're going to be leaning on people like Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth on the offensive side of the ball. And, I think Minka, we have to rely on Minka. We have to rely on TJ Watt. The secondary concerns me. The cornerbacks absolutely scared the living crap out of me. But, we saw really random cornerbacks step up last year. Like Rasul Douglas is a household name in the NFL now after being cut, routinely. So I'm not giving up hope quite yet. JC, do you feel any different on that?
So for the entirety of my Steelers fandom, the Steelers play up to their competition and they play down to their competition. If they play a bad team, they'll sleepwalk through the week. I don't know what it is they do during practice. I don't know if they're not motivated, but man, if the Steelers are underdogs, Mike Tomlin says something, gets into Cam Hayward's ear, gets into the leader's ears, and they turn it up. With the exception of the New England Patriots, we get stomped every single time we play the New England Patriots. Because Tom Brady knows how to beat a zone defense, and that's all we run against him for the past 2 decades, and he would just dink and dunk us to death until we gave up 40 points every single time.
Because we run man, and then Gronk destroys every safety we put against him.
Exactly.
Our
secondary has always been a problem. Our secondary has always been a problem. It's never been good. Our corners have always been lacking. I'm still thinking of Senquez Golston a couple of years ago, where he was a baseball player and they drafted him in the second round. He's like a 5'9" outside corner. That's a mismatch all day long. I will say this. The Cleveland Browns most likely going to have to be playing without Deshaun Watson for at least half the season. I'm not afraid of Jacoby Brissett necessarily. I don't know if you guys saw Myles Garrett was a 99 rated overall today in Madden over TJ Watt as a 96. Guy ties the NFL sack record. He still can't be rated higher than Myles Garrett. It's crazy. That being said, the Bengals are going to be without Jesse Bates most likely. He's going to hold out for a new contract. We're talking about the quarterback of an AFC Championship defense. Now all of a sudden he's not playing. What does that mean for the secondary? Is Eli Apple going to be the leader of the secondary? I don't know. I have a hard time believing it. And then the Ravens, I swear Eric DaCosta has something in my computer bugged. 2 of my top 5 players on my board, Tyler Linderbaum, Kyle Williams, he got both of them. Kyle Hamilton. I'm sorry, not
Hamilton,
Kyle Kyle Hamilton. He got both of them. J.K.
Yeah, they were
Dobbins,
sharp,
absolutely
man.
loved coming out in 2020. He was my RB1. He drafted him. Rashad Bateman loved him last year. He drafted him. This guy just lives to torment me and draft players that I love, and then I inevitably have to root against them every single year. That being said, has our situation changed really that much from last season with Ben Roethlisberger, who couldn't throw a pass further than 5 yards past the line of scrimmage? Deontay Johnson running 1,000 slant routes per season, racking up targets. I think our offense is going to be more consistent this season. I really do. I think the offensive line is going to take a step. We bring James Daniels in. Mason Cole, I'm not extremely excited about, but I think it gives Kendrick Green a little competition. Hey, you're a third-round pick last year, but if you don't get your stuff together, you're not going to be playing, and you're going to look like a bum asking for number 53 like Marquise Pouncey, and you'd be sitting on the sideline wearing a jacket in November. So I'm excited. Chuks Okorafor, I don't really get why we extended him for $13 a year, but we don't have any better options. Dan Moore, left tackle, he was a surprise last season. I thought he played pretty well down the stretch. So I think we do have pieces, and I don't really think that much has changed. We know what our weaknesses are. They've been our weaknesses for 2 decades pretty much. And it's all about what could we do in the run defense, because I agree, our run defense was pitiful last season. If we have any chance, we can't let guys like Jerick McKinnon or Rex Burkhead or like these like scat back running backs just stuff the ball down our throat for 4 quarters, because it's not Steelers football. It's not. So if we want to be competitive, which I do think we have a chance to be the second best team in the AFC North, if the Bengals can't get their cards in order and their house in line with that Jesse Bates deal, I think that's a lot bigger of a deal than people are talking about. And Deshaun Watson missing half the season, Jacoby Brissett just doesn't scare me. So we'll see. I think 9-8 overall is probably the range of outcome that I would expect. But I think it'll be a winning season.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. All right. So at the end of the day, we do want this to be a fantasy football podcast, even though I do enjoy some of the normal football talk too. So just for the Steelers offense, well, it could go offense or defensive players. If you guys want to throw some IDPs in there, that'd be fine with me. But players to target at projected cost, and then players to fade at their projected cost. You can go dynasty, redraft, any direction you want to go with this. For me, dynasty, there's just plenty. The only one that I'm probably fading at this point would be Chase Claypool. I think drafting Pickens and then drafting Austin was just guaranteeing that they are not going to be retaining him for a second contract. And then you've really just got to hope that Claypool can land it in a good spot. I think he's a tremendous athlete, but he would be the only current Steeler that I would be fading at cost for dynasty purposes. Redraft, if I can get him as a wide receiver 5, wide receiver 4, I would still be in on that. I'm a big Pat Freiermuth guy, not just because I'm a Penn State guy, but I thought he had a tremendous rookie season. Yeah, but just go around the horn here. We'll start with you, Seth. Who are you projecting, or who are you targeting at projected cost, and who are you fading at projected cost?
I mean, right now they're all kind of like feeling like values a little bit. You know, the industry, we just had our Scott Fishbowl run here a couple weeks ago. Chase Claypool in my league fell to like wide receiver plus 50. Like, I mean, I was taking people around him that I thought would be better. You know, just some names that I was, kind of surprised was going before him, though. I mean, it's a value. I don't love Chase Claypool. Pat Freiermuth is actually, it's a very, very good schedule for tight ends starting out next season. Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky have also very hyper-targeted tight ends. Last season's Kenny Pickett's top 2 targets, or two of his 3 top targets were tight ends. Mitch Trubisky, he's made Cole Kmet relevant at times. Jimmy Grandpa, all the way back there, he had a couple relevant seasons with Mitch as well. So I think Pat Freiermuth is the one value I really, really like on this. And obviously, I'll still take Najee. I think he's a safe play. I don't know if he has the upside of, the overall RB1, but he's going somewhere in the back half of the first round of most traditional redrafts right now. And just on the volume alone, I'm going to take it. 300 plus carries. He's probably going to project 4 once again. And he led the league in receptions for running backs as well. And that's kind of getting overshadowed a little bit here. So I'm back in on pretty much all these Steelers. Deontay Johnson, we have a love-hate relationship. I called him a bust last season. Prove me wrong. But, I'm a little love-hate on him. I'm okay with the ADP, though, right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about the Scott Fish Bowl because I did complete the Pat Fryermuth and Mitch Trubisky stack in that. So I am hoping that Trubisky can last longer than 9 weeks for my sake because he's my quarterback 3. My quarterback 4 is Drew Lock. So, yeah, I'm hoping that he can at least start more than that. But I'm very excited for both of them for sure, not just because of Scott Fish Bowl, but just in general too. But yeah, so I like those answers. How about you, JC? Who are you targeting at cost, and who are you fading at cost?
Well, in every league that I'm in, if I didn't draft him in the rookie draft, I'm going out of my way to go and get George Pickens after I waxed poetic about him for about 90 seconds earlier. Yep. I just think he's the next big thing. I really do. Even Chase Claypool, it may not be with the Steelers, but there's the whole thing with talent wins out, and if it's not with Pittsburgh, it'll be somewhere else. I'm talking about a guy that's 6'4", 230, ran a 4.4 at the combine. How many people did that? Him and Calvin Johnson? Is that it? Is that the list? That's the entire list? So we're talking about a guy that, he's athletically gifted as athletically gifted comes. Mapletron's a cool nickname too. So I did a breakdown, and there's 16 players that in their rookie year recorded 850 yards, 60 receptions, and 10-plus touchdowns. So rushing or receiving. He was on that list with A.J. Brown, Jamar Chase, a lot of guys that are elite end talents in Dynasty right now. So I think you're getting an elite level of talent that's just not in the best situation for his talent right now at a discount. I also think Najee Harris is somehow undervalued. I see people ranking him as RB5 in some instances. I don't see how you could possibly rank him below DeAndre Swift in Dynasty leagues when we've seen Najee Harris be a workhorse running back in his first season. We've never seen DeAndre Swift do it. It's been 2 years. He hasn't totaled more than 150 carries. People say he's a great receiving back. What's his highest total? 60 catches. It's good. It's not great. With a Mike Tomlin coach team and how the Pittsburgh Steelers run their team, Najee Harris is going to be a bell cow back for the entirety of that rookie contract. So you're talking about 4 more years of him getting 300-plus touches as a running back. And it's hard to come by, especially in fantasy football nowadays. So I think he has to be high.
It's like the torch from Lev Bell has been passed to Najee, so very excited for Najee. I'm with you there. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
That's okay. My 2 sells would be Deontay Johnson. I think you're going to see this passing offense be a little more spread out. I don't think you're going to see Deontay Johnson continue to just run 3-yard slants over the middle of the field and catch these little dink and dunks that Roethlisberger threw because he can't complete a pass down the field. I think that he's not going to see 169 targets anymore. So I think he has to do more with less work that he's going to be getting. I just don't see that being the case. And he's also going to be a free agent after this season. If he wants Terry McLaurin money, I can tell you right now they're not giving him Terry McLaurin money. So he's going to be playing somewhere else, and the Steelers, again, will just draft another receiver in day 2, and he'll inevitably end up being a producer for 4 more years. And a guy that I sell, and I'm sorry you're wearing a Nittany Lions hat, and I love Pat Fryermuth as a football player. I think he's a great tight end for real football. I just I can't recall a time to where a Pittsburgh Steelers tight end has been fantasy relevant. Heath Miller was a great tight end for football purposes, but I think the most touchdowns he ever scored was 8. So we're talking about a guy that he's going to have to compete with Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Chase Claypool, Najee Harris, all these guys for targets, maybe even Calvin Austin at some point as a gadget player. So for him to produce as the top 10 price tag tight end that he's getting, he has to score double-digit touchdowns. And I just haven't seen a Steelers tight end do it. Granted, we're in a new quarterback era. We're in a new offensive era, so I could be wrong. It's just I'll have to believe it until I see it. So for the time being, with the price tag that Pat Fryermuth is carrying, I'd rather trade him for, say, a guy like Cole Kmet plus, or maybe even like a Mike Gesicki plus, who's going to be a free agent after this season. He's playing on the franchise tag, and he could potentially go to a situation to where he's more involved in the passing game. So sorry to hurt your feelings, but
No, not in the slightest. So yeah, but it is interesting because like with the tight ends, to be aggressive on a tight end, you would have to hope that they can make this big jump, like what like George Kittle did a couple of seasons ago. Because of all the variety of weapons, I don't know if that's really in his range of outcomes. Despite me liking him as a player and despite just the offense in general, but I think you're right. I think he might have just a general limited ceiling that I just don't foresee it like what you saw with George Kittle and like Travis Kelce, forget it, and things like that. So, or even like Hawkinson, I think guys like that just it has a much more visible ceiling. I mean, Hawkinson has his own issues, so maybe that wasn't the best example, but
Fryermuth
yeah,
has concussion issues in his past as well, so that's another thing you have to take into account.
there you go. Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'm more than okay with a little cold water on my take, so that's great. No, it's awesome. Yeah. So how about you, Mike? Any players you're targeting at cost or any players you're fading at cost?
I think most Steelers are priced appropriately. The Deontay Johnson is a somehow really underrated player where he is one of the best route runners in the league, and yet he gets that credit only in the hardcore communities that know that. And that's a talent that I am fine buying. I agree he is gone next year. The Steelers are not going to break their way. They drafted Pickens, they drafted Austin. They're going to draft someone again next year. Deontay Johnson will be gone. I think he's a good enough player. The offense is still run by Matt Canada. He's going to get the ball. I think Deontay Johnson's going to be a good pick this year because he's falling to the wide receiver, like back end wide receiver 2 range in some leagues. And I don't like Kenny Pickett either, but the man doesn't need an arm to get to Deontay Johnson. He'll be open and short range. So I do like Deontay Johnson. Najee Harris is Najee Harris. I don't want to waste too much time on him. But Claypool is interesting because I will also bring up in the Scott Fishbowl that I took him. I took him at the 8-11 as my wide receiver 4 after I've taken 2 running backs and 2 quarterbacks and a tight end. It is swung too far for Chase Claypool. Big Ben had the 8th most red zone attempts last year. 8th most. That's a pretty good sample size. He turned that into 17 passing touchdowns. That was 87 red zone attempts into 17 passing touchdowns. There are only, I guess I went out, I looked at that, and I was like, wow, that is just abysmal. There are only, hold on, math, only 5 quarterbacks since 2010 who have 80 plus red zone attempts and have thrown less than that.
Wow.
He was abysmal. He was awful. Claypool is a really amazing red zone threat. He is a very good wide receiver that that was his second year. Like, I think a lot of people are misconstrued that he's entering the contract year already, that we're 3 years into his career. He's never made a step. He had an amazing rookie year. By any rookie standard that you don't include Jamar Chase, you don't include Justin Jefferson, by normal standards, he put up 10 plus touchdowns. He put 800 yards. It was great. And now he's being left for dead. Why? Because he did about the same in his second year? It's because he couldn't freaking mature enough to get the first down and get the ball, then place it. But that is real life football. That is my opinion of Chase Claypool. That does nothing to do with his fantasy take because he's a good player who will work out. Now, I'll throw out a name to fade. It's not Pat Fryermuth because I do think that's another situation. I think the talent will win out. And if Deontay Johnson's gone next year, it's a lot of vacated targets for Pat Fryermuth if we do agree that he's a good player. I agree it might not be as much this year. We'll see. Trubisky and Pickett's tendencies are all over the place. But the name I want to throw out to fade, I want to throw out Minkah Fitzpatrick because I'll touch on it as part of the IDP guys. I'm not I'm not going to call myself an expert in IDP, but I've done a lot of studying this offseason. Minkah was used remarkably far from the line from scrimmage. If any Steeler fan was watching, he was 30 yards off, and then he was too slow to get to the corner. A cornerback route or comeback route, on zone coverage. Forget about it. He was too far. The cornerback was too short. They got picked apart. Terrell Austin got promoted to defensive coordinator. He was the secondary coach last year. With that mindset, I don't see why Minkah's usage would change. And last year, as good as he is, as talented as he is, it was a very much an outlier year for his tackles. And I don't think he's going to repeat 100 tackles. I don't think that's going to happen. And when he had a lower amount of tackles in 2020, he had a career high 5 interceptions. He was still the DB 23. Yeah, he's being drafted as the DB 6. He's being drafted as a top 10 based on name. But I don't think the tackles are going to be there when he's playing that far from scrimmage, and he's never been a great player at forcing interceptions. That is our biggest gripe with Minkah as Steeler fans, right, Jason? You like that? Minkah does not force turnovers, and we love him. He's great. He's a very talented player, but he does not. He's not changing the game like we're going to pay him to do, and I'm fine paying him. Maybe they'll come, but it's the same system. The guy running that system got promoted. And he's being used too far from scrimmage for me to rely on his tackles bouncing back. So just a name to keep in mind on the IDP circles because his name value and his real life talent it's up. I just said my light, but it is up there. It is up there. But fantasy production, I don't know.
Are we worried about Brian Flores coming back onto the coaching staff and messing up Minka Fitzpatrick's headspace?
It is a very funny coincidence that happened again. That if anyone remembers, Brian Flores essentially kicked Minka out of Miami, and then Brian Flores strolls back up to Pittsburgh saying, "You can't get rid of me." I'm not totally worried because I think Terrell Austin is still going to be running this defense. Mike Thomas is still going to run this defense. Flores is coming in, he's defensive assistant. I don't know what that means. I suspect it'll have a lot more to do with the linebackers and potentially fixing Devin Bush, given Flores' background in that area. But sure, let's add that as another red flag of if it's just too funny to make up that the guy that kicked out an All-Pro for a very good trade of a first-round pick for an All-Pro, safety is now coming back to work with the same All-Pro safety. So just interesting to monitor. I do like Minkah in Superflex format, though. I was really upset to not get him as my QB3 in SFB, so I do like where you're at, Steve.
Oh,
I have
perfect.
Jimmy Garoppolo as my QB3 right now, so it's we'll see how that goes. He's throwing the ball, so that's a step forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think at that point you're QB3. It's like you want to get a quarterback that has like the best weapons at his disposal, right? So Garoppolo, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, like it's an awesome situation. Same thing with Trubisky, in my opinion. I think that with the weapons in Pittsburgh are phenomenal, and if Trubisky can add in a little rushing upside as well, I think that would be great. But hopefully you have two QBs ahead of him that are more rock solid, and you kind of have to kind of rely on them if you need to, because the scoring is a little funky there. But so having that Fitzpatrick and Flores dynamic be brought up on the show is exactly why I wanted people like you on the show, because I completely overlooked that. I completely forgot about that. And in my little introduction, I say I may not be as plugged into the teams as the fans coming on are. So that's great. I really love you guys bringing that up to my attention. I just completely forgot that whole circus with Brian Flores getting hired. I was happy for him to land a job. You know what I mean?
Oh.
And again, like he was phenomenal in New England. I'm like, just as a position coach or as an assistant defensive coordinator, whatever he is, I think it's a fantastic hire. But it is funny. It's like kind of awkward, right? Like they like kind of are like the lunch line together. It's like, oh, hey, or whatever, It's like, so hopefully they can work out their differences there and just focus on the goal ahead, which is just winning games, right? So.
It is. I think it is going to be kind of super awkward for the two of them to work together. We're talking about a guy that wanted Minka to play corner at one point, wanted to play nickel, and now Mika, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he has to play so far back off the line of scrimmage because Terrell Edmunds can't make a tackle if his life depended on it. So he has to play like last resort safety. I got to throw my body at this guy, otherwise he's going to take it to the house because our linebackers weren't tackling anybody. Terrell Edmunds wasn't tackling anybody. So if they get past the defensive line and our linebackers aren't tackling anybody, Minka Fitzpatrick's got to do it all by himself. And with that being said, he is the highest paid safety in the NFL right now. So we do need him to start making those plays and making those turnovers that he did when he came over in that trade that launched his potential Defensive Player of the Year award campaign and got the Steelers, into that playoff hunt. I mean, I distinctly remember him playing that 49ers game, that play against the Colts where he picked the ball off from the end zone, that Rams touchdown that he scored. I mean, Minka Fitzpatrick single-handedly was keeping the Steelers in games because of his turnover ability. And I'd love to see him get back to that. I think the problem is that there's not enough people making plays around him, and his focus has to be transitioned elsewhere, which in turn will hurt his IDP value.
How bad the linebackers were for the Steelers last year, it really cannot be understated. Devin Bush was the biggest liability on the defensive side of football last year. That's not Steelers hyperbole. They had no one to fill in for him. They had Robert Spillane, who also got hurt, who is slow, sluggish. He's barely a run defender. You cannot put him in pass defense. Joe Schobert is pass protection, and that's it. And he's not even good at that. That's why he's unemployed. And they couldn't take Devin Bush off the field, and he was abysmal. So I'm hoping that Miles Jack does help ease the load there. And I do want to say on the record, because I don't think I've mentioned this show, I think Mitch Trubisky is going to be a lot better than people think. I think that the only reason we're going to see Kenny Pickett this year is because they will be out of the playoff contention. And then when that happens, they're going to throw out their first-round guy. We're going to see. This is a franchise that promotes stability. They're not going to panic move, and especially once they make that move, they're not going to flip-flop back. So I think Mitch Trubisky is going to play well. I think he's going to play well enough to keep this job. The team's just not there to be in the playoff race in the AFC, and that's when we're going to see Pickett, which I'm sure Seth would love to, would love to come from my throat there, but maybe another time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it's like a Andy Dalton, Justin Fields situation.
No.
I mean, Mitch would just have to just completely vomit on himself and on the field multiple weeks in a row. Like, he'd have to be so horrendous that they would have no choice but to try pick it out. You know what I mean? So, I don't foresee that happening, but you never know. I guess stranger things have happened, but no, I agree. I think Pickett is definitely a very solid, deeper, super flex option, as a QB3. So I'm with you there. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, guys, I think we nailed it. I think we have a very reasonable expectation for the Steelers for both real life and for fantasy football purposes. So just want you guys to go around, reintroduce yourselves, where people can find your content, and just let everyone know who's listening, my mom included, what you guys are working on. So we'll start with you, JC.
Hi, Steve's mom. JC, I just throw some tweets out of some stuff that I think is interesting. I'm doing a lot of Devi work over at Dynasty Football Factory right now. So if you want to put a face to the 2023 firsts and seconds that you're trying to acquire in your fantasy leagues, and you want to know who those people might be and what kind of value you can start placing on those guys, go take a look over at our site. It's pretty reasonably priced as well for a yearly subscription, and there's a lot of guys that are doing some pretty good work analytically speaking, not just really watching film. They're breaking it down, and they're giving you a more in-depth look at some of these player outcomes and stuff.
Awesome. That's great. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right, Mike.
All right. I the best thing I could throw out is my Twitter, because I put out a lot of the stuff I actually do on there. So, shoot me a follow at Michael __Ciccoli, a pretty easy one to remember if you just remember the name. I run, as Steve mentioned, the IDP Guys newsletter that comes out every single Wednesday in the morning. So that will be a very free thing for you to sign up. A very good way to get your fantasy football fix sent right to you, free of charge as well, might I add. But so it is definitely something to check out. I put that on my Twitter, so check that out. I said check out too many times, but also have a podcast live show that goes every single Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Again, that'll be on my Twitter, and it'll be up on the IDP Guys YouTube. Definitely check that out. They're doing Grant at IDP Guys is putting his heart into it every single week. So shoot a subscribe. Those things don't cost anything to you, but it means a lot to us. And any eyes that we get on our content means all the world. So Twitter is the best way.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, but that was well said. Yeah, please subscribe to the IDP Guys YouTube channel so you can continue to watch this show, all of Michael's content, and all the other great content that is put out. And I'm not just saying that. Really great stuff from Brandon and Matt. A lot of great stuff. So, guys, just once again, I wish you well this year with your Steelers and with your fantasy leagues, of course. But I hope you guys have a great night and a great season coming up here. All right. So take it easy.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Steve.
Thank you.
All right. Yep, you got it. Best of luck.